Hello, and welcome to She Comes By, a podcast where I interrogate my friends about their sexuality. I'm your host, Alex Mannix. This is the last episode of 2025, and we have a great one for you today. My guest is Ryan Letts, a psychedelic coach and all-around beautiful human. We talk identity, DEI, a bit of woo, and of course, bisexuality. Since this is our last show of the year, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's listened to the show, to all of our guests, and to my fantastic editor and producer, Josh. Making this project happen has been a lifelong dream come true, and I can't wait for what we have in store next year. I'm so grateful and so excited for you to keep coming by. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to She Comes By. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Alex. I am truly flattered and honored to be here. First-time caller, one-time listener. I've listened to one episode.
I'm honored you listen to anything. But I ask guests to introduce themselves on the show. Would you mind introducing yourself?
I would be happy to. I am Ryan Letts. I use they, them pronouns, and I live in Los Angeles. I am a psychedelic integration coach, which is a fancy way of saying that I prepare people to do psychedelic journeys, and then I process with them afterwards through integration. And it's very interesting and fun. And I could share many stories that are not bisexuality related. One involving being bitten, and maybe we'll table that for a second.
Are you okay? Is there a scar?
There was a very small bruise, but yes, I am okay. Not non-maimed.
Wow, occupational hazard that I wouldn't have thought of.
Literally.
But Ryan, who are we to each other?
Who are we to each other? We are good friends. I honestly, Alex, I'll get a little sappy and say that since COVID, we met just over a year ago. But since COVID, I have really struggled to maintain friendships, and I have always prided myself on being adept at maintaining friendships. And I value our friendship, and I am honored that you want me in your life and the feelings are mutual. Reciprocity is a big deal, and I feel a lot of reciprocity from you. So that's me being sappy.
Oh, thank you so much. It is truly reciprocal. I actually remember the first conversation we ever had, and it was just one of those things where there was something in the air.
Magnetic.
Well, what are you up to these days?
So I just started grad school, which is not a thing I would have thought would have come out of my mouth. In addition to coaching, and I am sometimes facilitating. I used to work in DEI, RAP, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm doing grad school and coaching, and I also TRIPSIT, which is being with people while they're on their journeys. And I don't know, I see a lot of movies. I go to the theater. That's what I do. You said you used to work in DEI.
Can you talk a bit about transitioning from that work to education and the psychedelic work that you do now?
Yes, I'm going to try to truncate this story and make it only a little bit woo-woo. I assume you have some listeners in Los Angeles, so I can make it a little bit woo-woo, but I did...
Woo-woo, very, very welcome.
Okay.
We love the woo.
Woo-woo. I did a very intense psychedelic almost a year ago to the day. It's called Ibogaine, and when I was journeying, I kind of saw my future. I had been toying with the idea of becoming a therapist or coach in some capacity for a very long time, and I was just realizing the other day, when I was a freshman in college almost 20 years ago, I was just fascinated by sociology and psychology, and I was like, well, it took me 18 years to really execute upon that obsession. And yeah, so I was on my Ibogaine journey and had this vision of being a coach. And actually before I went, I had a vision of being a coach or a therapist. And then 3 weeks after I returned from this retreat, the psychedelic retreat, I was laid off from my job in DEI. And it was... I loved my job, and I have nothing but positive things to say about my work. Honestly, without it, I would not be in my current position. But I was grateful because the universe gave me the nudge that I needed. And then I did a psychedelic integration coaching program for 6 months. And then now I'm here and queer.
Yay. Yeah. I love hearing about people's career journeys to different things, and how someone might not necessarily be able to draw the through line between a DEI professional and a psychedelic coach professional. What do you feel like you've brought from your past careers into what you do now?
I love that question. Honestly, so many things. I was a facilitator, so I facilitated, sometimes it would be smaller groups, sometimes it would be hundreds of people in person in different countries, to different audiences, to people that were in support of the content and not. And so I had to become very adept at talking about very complicated and very nuanced and very controversial things in a way that was accessible to people. And so I had to become adept at reading people. Like, what is your body language telling me? Are you averse to this topic? Are you pro? Like, how am I going to approach you? And, social identity played a really big role in this. So a lot of the role that I had was coaching and advisory. So I'm able to kind of take those transferable skills of facilitating, of honestly talking, hence my presence on this podcast. But it's a lot of being able to articulate myself in a way that is cogent. I'm not necessarily the most, as you can already probably tell, I'm not the most succinct person, but that's okay.
We have two non-succinct people on this call right now. Speaking of you, Ryan, it is now time for the real question. Are you bisexual? Why or why not?
Okay, so I will reveal this to you and to you only, because this is just a private therapy conversation, right? So I do not identify as bisexual. I identify as queer. I am non-binary, but I was assigned male at birth, as you can probably tell from my deeply masculine voice. So I identify as queer. I am an assigned male at birth person, an AMAB human, and I've traditionally only been attracted to AMAB humans, but in the last couple of years, that has become not true. I find myself attracted to trans men, but also non-binary masculine people and gay men and queer men. And so there's not really a word for that. I don't identify as bisexual, but there's not really a word for how I identify, because I have found, and maybe this is my hot take, that most gay men or gay AMAB humans in Los Angeles, or just generally, really are like very much about the penis. And they're like, I only date cis gay men or cis queer men. And yeah, I mean, language is freeing and language is wonderful, but it's also limiting. And there's not really a word to describe. I use queer for myself. That's my long-winded answer.
Yeah. No, and thank you for sharing that. You're not the first non-bisexual on this podcast. You are welcome here. All are welcome here.
Thank you so much.
I legitimately, like, I asked the question a little tongue in cheek, but I legitimately like to know, like, if you're not bisexual, I'm curious why. I'm not meaning to say, how dare you not be?
I'm never gonna claim the term bisexuality, but I am attracted to more than one gender. So, labels are so fascinating to me, and specifically the label bisexual, which I'm sure has been discussed. It's a controversial term. Yeah, it's very interesting.
This kind of leads into the next question. What does bisexuality mean to you, or when you hear bisexual, what do you think?
So I used to facilitate LGBT inclusion content, and the answer that I would give when going through the alphabet soup acronym is that bisexuality is a term that means you are attracted to genders like yours and different from yours, to get out of the gender binary, because as a non-binary person, I am always here to dismantle the gender binary. That is kind of my textbook answer, and I am always intrigued and curious about meeting bisexual people that identify as bisexual, because there's almost like a kind of subversion. We live in LA and everyone is so woke here, #woke, because we're trying to get to the world of, gender is less important. Like, how do we get out of the gender binary? Identifying as bisexual is an intentional choice and an intentional decision to not identify as pansexual. And I feel like there are so many people who use queer or pansexual. So, I love being a part of the queer community, because we are a group of intentionally politically subversive fucks. And the way that we can do that is by being like, I don't give a shit if you prefer identify as pansexual or queer. Like, I think that the term bisexual most resonates with me.
I have thoughts about that. Me and my friend Rebecca talk about like the term pansexual, and we were in college in the like early 2010s when we were saying, oh, we're bisexual. We were told like, oh, actually that's transphobic. You know, bi is implying there's only two genders. You like men and women. Like pansexual is like the more accurate thing to say. There's an interesting amount of validity to that. And I've talked to other non-binary folks who say like, especially on dating apps, like someone who identifies as pansexual is more likely to be accepting of like gender expansive folks as opposed to someone who says bisexual on a dating app. Like they might be chill, but also this person has like received pretty like transphobic comments from people who identify as bisexual, like when they match. My defense of the term is like historically bisexual people have like been involved in like the gay rights movement and queer rights movement, but yeah, I'm curious your thoughts. And even as like a professional educator, like when someone asks the difference between bisexuality and pansexuality, what did you say? And what do you feel?
What I feel, is that it's none of my business how people identify. And I think that it takes a lot of chutzpah to say, you know, this is, you're being X, Y, and Z, and you should identify differently. And I also want to validate the feeling of, you know, the fact that we live in a transphobic society, especially in the year of our Lord 2025. And I want to validate that and say that's a really valiant effort to try to dismantle, as I've been saying, both the patriarchy and misogyny and transphobia and just the gender binary in general. And the fact that this new definition of bisexuality, meaning you're attracted to genders like yours and different from yours, I think is a way to create a more inclusive definition of what the word means. And pansexuality is still a little bit more of a niche term, you know, pan meaning all, so attracted to all genders. So I don't really think it's anyone's business. I think that we can have conversations about why we identify, but I don't think that it is my business how you, Alex Mannix, identify. I don't think that I really have a say in it. I think that we can have a, you know, great conversation and a nuanced conversation about it, but to come out of the gate and be like, how you identify is transphobic, it's obviously rooted in a projection of somebody's trauma, and I don't want to minimize that. Yeah, it kind of brings up a general, interesting rhetorical question or thought experiment, which is how much of how we identify in general is defined by other people. And I'd be curious to take like a straw poll of people that are pansexual versus bisexual versus queer, of how much of why you identify the way you identify is because of your own autonomy versus the concern of other people. Especially it's like I identify as queer, I mean, because I'm non-binary, but also because it's politically subversive and it just vibes more with me. And I guess gay doesn't necessarily perfectly describe it. And as I mentioned, most gay people, at least assigned male at birth people, are typically a little bit more rigid in whom they are attracted to. And maybe there's a little bit of distancing from that I want. So I guess even for myself that I'm identifying the way that I am, you know, it's language is so fascinating.
It really is. And yeah, and I think labels are helpful until they're not. But having said that, I think you answered this a little bit, but what words do you use to describe your sexuality?
Queer. The Q in the alphabet soup. I used to identify as gay, as I said, and then I moved to queer, and yeah, it's just a fucking cool word.
I really like it too. I think it's funny writing a bisexual newsletter. It's like, when do I write bi? When do I write bi plus? When do I write LGBTQIA?
It's so complicated, and like we can get a little bit too in the weeds here the more and more that we talk about it. And I like getting in the weeds, but I know for myself there becomes the white woman with the math problems meme of like, that's how I feel sometimes when I get too in the weeds for myself. Am I like, is it because of me? Is it my trauma? Am I doing this just for my mom? I don't know.
Yeah. Or even just like, well, what's the etymology of this? Like, blah, 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 blah. Trust, like, yeah, there's so many directions you could go. And at the end of the day, I think maybe we'll just like end up in the same space, but I guess it's the journey.
That's exactly right. Yes. Loosey-goosey.
Loosey-goosey. Speaking of loosey-goosey, When did you realize you weren't straight?
Hi. I am getting self-conscious about making this interesting for your readers and publicists and listeners, as Matt and Bowen of Las Culturistas would say. I mean, I'm like super fucking gay. I mean, since I can remember, I was a very sexually curious child. Lad. There's no non-binary term for that. I'm just wee child. And yeah, I remember in the 5th grade waiting in line for the bathrooms, the showers at outdoor science school. And I was trying to peep over at the boys and getting really curious. One of them caught me, and that was obviously so devastating and so dangerous at the time. I don't think I've ever talked about this, definitely not publicly on all my public platforms. All the 780 followers I had on Instagram when I had an Instagram. So you're welcome for this exclusive. Yeah, so I've known for a very long time. I shared this with you earlier, but today is my 19-year anniversary of coming out to my parents. I came out to them on October 16th of 2006. The fact that that's 19 years ago makes me want to throw up. That's insane, but it's true. And yeah, I'd come out. I was in show choir in high school, so every person in my choir, many people in my choir were also queer in some way. So we just kind of all pulled each other out of the closet in some capacity. So the answer is very long time.
Yeah. Well, again, congratulations. What a momentous occasion to mark. It's so interesting, the narrative of like, when did you know or not know? What was that coming out experience like for you?
It was difficult. I think I dissociated a lot my senior year. I came out my senior year, and I want to be explicit about the fact that, as I said, you know, my family and the people in my life were doing the best with the tools that they had at the time. And actually, I was literally just thinking about this morning. I listened to another podcast with a homosexual who is older than me and experienced a great deal of trauma, arguably much more trauma than I did. I mean, my experience was kind of middle of the road compared to a lot of people. I had many blessings. I had such a wonderful support system. And this person seems to be in resentment a lot towards their family, just a lot of resentment. And just that you can tell that the hatred still lives inside their body. And it's a comedy podcast, and they talk about it kind of flippantly and jokingly, but I honestly kind of walked away really sad and asked myself the question of like, how much is this resentment really serving them? And what I've had to work through over the last couple of years is working through that resentment and understanding that it doesn't serve me. Resentment is corrosive. There's a really beautiful movie that I'm not involved in, but I will plug anyway, called Exhibiting Forgiveness. And it is probably exactly what you imagine. It's about forgiveness. And it's with Andre Holland, and the filmmaker is named Titus Kaphar. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a famous artist, and the plot is basically about an alcoholic father who comes back into the main character's life, and like, does he take him back? Does he introduce him to his son? What does that forgiveness look like? And it's really nuanced. And I watched this movie a couple weeks before I did my psychedelic experience, and there's a lot of profound timing and just recognizing that resentment is corrosive, and it literally physically damages your body, and that hatred. How was that for a succinct answer?
No, that was, thank you so much for sharing about it. And, the thing of, every podcast that talks about queerness, like, it has to be about the coming out experience. Like, I think that's not necessarily what I want, but it's also a part of the experience. And I think it's also important. I don't know. It was interesting. I was just having lunch with some family members, and it's just the way the conversation went. Someone was like, well, you're implying that, you haven't been supported because you didn't talk about this one aspect of your life. And I was just like, I didn't say that. I've talked with my parents about the way they reacted and how maybe it was harmful at the time, but that was over 10 years ago. And we've moved on from it. And the conversation at the lunch was kind of this person. And again, I feel really grateful for, the work I've done, because in that moment, that person, I think, was projecting onto me something that just wasn't wasn't accurate or wasn't something that I was putting out. And I was able to say, oh, yeah, no, that's not what I mean. And, I've always felt supported, even if, that support hasn't always been perfect. But I also really relate to what you're saying about resentment. And I think there's a quote somewhere where it's like, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. And that is definitely something I've been trying to sit with as of late. I think I'm better at not drinking the poison of resentment, but there's definitely, I take a shot of it every now and again. I no longer drink alcohol, but boy, do I take shots of resentment.
It's at least why I do it is because it's self-serving to victimize myself and to be like, well, I'm not responsible for my current circumstances, when in reality, the only person who is responsible for my current circumstances is myself, yours truly. No one else is responsible. I love the phrase, like, it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. Like, yeah. Love that. We're on the same wavelength. Yes. I'm snapping. I hope this is great for audio. It sounds like your family member is dealing with something that I've observed that's really hard for family members, which is the belief that, like, you could have made a mistake at all and negatively impacted your child in any way. I have so much compassion for parents. I am not a parent. I do not intend to be a parent, but I have so much compassion for parents who have to deal with apologizing and also the ones that can't, the ones that are like, nope, I did better than my parents did. I'm doing fucking great. And I'm not insinuating that that's my experience, but what I have observed anecdotally is that it is really difficult to recognize that, like, I believe wholeheartedly one of the tenets of what I live by is that multiple truths can exist, which is something that I bring into coaching. It's something that I brought into my DEI practice and facilitation, which is like, you could, on one hand, you could provide your child with a really wonderful life full of so many great gifts, and you could also have negatively impacted them or done something unintentionally to cause them harm that they are now seeing a therapist about.
Yeah, because that's like in a certain it's an uncomfortableness to sit with. And I personally have had to learn to just sit in that uncomfortable feeling of like, I have caused harm. Mm-hmm. And that I've caused harm, and like, maybe that doesn't mean I'm the worst person in the world, but it also I have to admit I'm not perfect, and that I'm capable of causing harm.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time when you questioned your sexuality or the words you use to describe yourself?
I guess I've been kind of bearing the lead because I obviously did identify as bisexual when I was 15 and 16 before really taking on the label of gay. And I think this brings us to kind of an interesting part of the conversation, which is the cliche that gay men use bisexual as a lily pad and they're just like not gay. And then there's like the cliche or the stereotype of women are just really straight and just kind of want to be cool. You know, in the spirit of bringing in nuance and multiple truths, like from my anecdotal experience, a lot of gay men or gay AMAP humans did at one point identify as bisexual and used it as like, I'm going to dip my toe in to see how this feels because I might not be ready to give up ever being attracted to a woman. And I mean, honestly, I don't know. Like, I might wake up tomorrow and fall in love with a woman. It hasn't happened so far, but fucking weirder things have happened. I don't know.
And again, it's so funny because in terms of like the born this way argument, it's like, I was born this way, so you can't change me. This is not a choice. It's how I am. And so I deserve rights. Like, that's like been, the strategy for how queer people have gotten rights over the past, many decades and years. And also with many things being true at once, like, and that's true for some people, but for some people, what you were saying of like, maybe I could wake up tomorrow and feel differently, but I don't right now. So why are we having an issue? Or like, why can't I do what I want to do?
This brings us to the topic du jour, which is the recent Washington Post article that came out about a gay man who is married to a woman. And, it just brings us into the complicated conversation of who, what defines someone being gay and what defines someone being straight. So this gay man is in love with a woman and they are married and they are in a monogamous relationship and he still identifies as gay. So if you were dating a woman, Alex, who continued to identify as straight, like, how would you feel? I'm curious how you would feel about that. This is an interesting thought exercise and maybe fruitless, but.
No, good thought experiment. And it's interesting. I think it would depend, right? I'm actually, and this is also, oh my God, we could get into the lesbian versus bisexual stuff here too, which I don't want to make anyone mad on either of those sides. So I'm going to try to not make enemies. But I think it would depend on the nature of our relationship. Like, I think one of my hot takes is, like, it used to be, or it's that thing of like, ugh, like that girl's just, making out with other girls at parties to get attention. She's really straight. I'm partly like, oh, well, do you get to kiss somebody fun at a party? Who cares? Also, maybe that girl's not as straight as she thinks she is, but also, who's to say? But why are you complaining? Are you just complaining because she's not kissing you? Like, are you just not one of the girls she's kissing?
I'm always mad when people aren't kissing me.
Me too. I see people kissing and I'm like, why not me?
Excuse me.
Why not me too?
You're not allowed to have love if I'm not having love. I'm the only person who should be kissed on this planet.
Precisely. We're, again, same page.
I have a lot of thoughts about this because I have seen and observed people that are both slightly biphobic and also bisexual people that are self-conscious of identifying as bisexual because they're in heterosexual relationships. And I believe that this comes from like a scarcity mindset and the concept of gatekeeping, which is rooted in the very real homophobia that we experience. But I do think that it is still rooted in, there is a limited number of people that can be within this community. And that's just not the case. I think that we can have a nuanced conversation about people who identify and kind of subconsciously or even consciously know that they don't have any interest in dating someone of a different gender, but still want to use that label. I think that we can have a nuanced conversation, but I think that that's a minority of people, at least anecdotally. I don't think that a majority of people that are bisexual or pansexual or queer actually are doing it just to be cool. We live in a very homophobic society that often restricts people from exercising their sexual orientation. I'm sure there's a majority of the people that are not actually exercising their sexuality are people that are closeted and have so much internalized homophobia, biphobia, panphobia, whatever you want to call it, that are in monogamous heterosexual relationships that have and they have no intention of leaving it, that actually can't or won't act upon their same-sex attraction.
If we weren't in such a homophobic society, like AMAB folks who felt like they needed to use, bi as a lily pad might not feel the need to do that. And the people who legitimately are like, I think I might be bi, and then find out that's not the case, like it would just be okay. It would be fine. It would be fine.
Yes. If we lived in a world where there was no homophobia, then we would also experience no gatekeeping. Like, the reason why we experience gatekeeping is because people are like, well, you haven't experienced the same oppression that I have. And you're stealing the limelight from people that have actually experienced oppression, which is valid. And it makes me question, what are your motivations of like insisting that it's also like very oppression Olympics-y.
What role does sexuality play in your life?
A very central one. Being gay has unfortunately been my entire personality. I will say this, and this might actually be the most controversial take that I have, which is, I'm sure that I've experienced some questionable things based on my gender, but I generally can pass as a cisgender person. I mean, I haven't sought gender affirmation procedures, but being gay is a very, very visible and very obvious thing about me. I am a pretty feminine person, so I've never really been able to pass as straight. Being marginalized in DEI gives you a reputation. There's a reason. I mean, there's many reasons why straight cisgender men, white men specifically, are not very prominent in the DEI world. And when you come from a marginalized background, you are able to speak about oppression and marginalization from a lived experience. So when I facilitated content, it was a big part of what I talked about and a big part of my experience. And, because I grew up in a very religious family, sexuality and homosexuality and queerness and just like queer theory or the political nature of the queer community is something that I talk about. Queerness is very central. Most of my friends are queer or bisexual or pansexual or gay in some capacity. So it's a very central part of my life, I would argue. And yeah, being gay is unfortunately all of me.
I wouldn't say unfortunately. I know we talked a little bit about how, your DEI professional experience has come into play with your current profession as a psychedelic coach. Has your experience with psychedelics and that world affected what role sexuality plays in your life and vice versa?
I'm gonna start off by sharing some fun facts that I learned. I love fun facts. These are not fun facts. These are just statistics that I learned from the Psychedelic Conference. I have a workshop on psychedelic coaching or just psychedelics for LGBT folks that I am really proud of. And there is data to show 24.7% of women reported increases in same-sex attraction, 13.3% of men reported increases, and 33.3% of participants of other gender identities reported changes in same-sex attraction. And obviously the people on this panel at the psychedelic conference made the tongue-in-cheek joke of, we're not saying that psychedelics make you gay. But my personal interpretation is that psychedelics are likely to deconstruct and remove the shame and obstacles to realizing who you are. I know anecdotally of at least two people, people that I know that have realized or come to better understand their sexuality while on psychedelics through psychedelics and plant medicine. I will also share that the coaching program that I did for 6 months, I was in a group of really wonderful but very diverse people, diverse politically. My circle in Los Angeles is pretty homogenous. Most of us are very left, most of us are very progressive. I honestly did not know the political leanings of most of the people. I still don't know, I suspect. But it was really fascinating for me to observe this because I came into this coaching program just having left the DEI world and, I would facilitate and my intention was to change hearts and minds, but also to just challenge norms and hopefully dismantle racism and homophobia and create a more equitable and inclusive world. But I think because DEI was so politicized, people would come into the workshops that I facilitated just very defensive. And even if they didn't necessarily express it, but when I was in this coaching program, I came in without any desire to change people's minds. I just shared from my personal experience. And, a lot of my trauma is because I was raised in a certain belief system as a queer, non-heterosexual, non-cisgender person. And so it just kind of naturally came up in conversation. And I was really heartened by so many of the responses that I got. I will be the first to tell you that I don't want to be like, the media is pitting us against each other, but they really are. The compassion that I was shown and the curiosity that I was shown by people. I was talking to someone in my coaching program who was like a cop in, upstate New York. And he was like, "Hey, Ryan, I heard you say this word the other day, and I didn't know it. Can I ask you about it?" And I said, "Sure." He said, non-binary. What does that mean?" And we just had a very lovely conversation about what it means to be non-binary. He had never heard the term before. He didn't come in being like, he had no desire to lambast me, or he had no judgment, and he also just wasn't exposed to the LGBT community. And so I think that we need to focus more on specifically how psychedelics can heal and work in tandem with healing modalities for queer people. And I also want there to be more representation.
I think you've listened to an episode, so you might know what's coming next, but it's time for another rousing game of Gay Straight Bi.
Gay Straight Bi.
Love!
Which is a game that comes to us from my dear friend Nkechi, who...
Hi, Nkechi.
She came up with this game, and so that I can use it, I have to give her a compliment every time, which she is a wonderful, beautiful, smart, intelligent WGA writer available for hire, staffing, and casting. So,
oh my God, hire Nkechi. I've met her once. I think I've just met her once at your birthday party, and she is an absolute delight. 10 out of 10, recommend.
So with that contractual obligation fulfilled, Gay Straight Bi is a game where I'm going to give you 3 things, and you have to tell me which of them is gay, which of them is straight, and which of them is bi.
Great. I love doing, making reductive calls about things and putting people in boxes.
Your 3 things are ibogaine, psilocybin, and ayahuasca.
Oh my God. I was not expecting that. Ibogaine is straight because ibogaine it's called the stern grandfather. Ibogaine is fucking serious. Ayahuasca is bisexual and psilocybin is gay.
I love it. Do you have reasoning or just that's it?
Ayahuasca is like a maternal, it's in the medicine world it's called grandmother, and she's very, she can be both stern, but she can also be very gentle. And I was actually just prepping someone for an ayahuasca journey this weekend, and I have not done ayahuasca myself, but I am familiar with the medicine, and it is very, I just see it like a flowing woman in a shawl. And it's just like, she has her beads on, and she's like, all are welcome. And then psilocybin is gay because I had a friend who told me that he was on psilocybin and he was fucked by God, and God came inside of him and ejaculated all of the Kundalini wisdom of the universe up his ejaculated all of the wisdom into his Kundalini spine, and for like 5 seconds he knew everything that is just the entire knowledge of the universe. And so many other reasons. I mean, I did a psilocybin journey once, and there were 2 men next to me that were both assuredly heterosexual. One was like a very loving bear, and the other was like a pretty stereotypical attractive human. And during the medicine journey, I would I felt like my body's fused with them, and I felt like even though I like really wasn't attracted to one of them, like I wanted to just like cuddle and hug them. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what medicine it was, but psychedelics make you gay. I'm gonna say it. That's a joke. Yes, that is a joke. They turn the frickin' frogs gay. Our penultimate question, do you have any favorite pieces of bi content or bi media or queer content, queer media that you enjoy and like to plug? An argument can be made about so many movies. Like, in most movies, they don't come out and say, I am gay! Except for, like, Love, Simon. But Portrait of a Lady on Fire is, even though they're 2 women, it's very bisexual energy. I love that movie so much. I listened to the scene when she's actually on fire. I listened to that choral piece that they sang all the time. Actually, I need to do that after this. Call Me By Your Name. Oliver is bisexual, canonically. So we'll call it bisexual media. I love that movie. That movie tore my soul open. I saw it on a date. Do not recommend. The person I was on a date with was lovely, but we were driving home and we had probably like a 30-minute drive, and I couldn't talk about the movie. I dropped him off. I love Sufjan Stevens so much. I've loved him since I was 16, and now he's gay. What? Oh my God. Blessed. Well, he might be bisexual. I don't know how he identifies, but he was married to a man, or had a relationship with a man. I dropped this gentleman off and I sobbed so hard I thought I was going to have to pull the car over. It was insane. Booksmart is an incredible movie. Love, love, love Booksmart. Have you seen the movie Disobedience?
I haven't. I'm aware of it, but I have not seen it.
Also, The Favorite. I love The Favorite.
I also haven't seen The Favorite, but I also...
Canceled. I'm off this podcast. I'm hitting my microphone. I'm so perturbed about this. But I think every person can agree that the best bisexual movie of all time is Challengers.
Yes. Ugh.
It is.
Amen.
I cannot speak enough positive words about that movie, but I will use this as an opportunity to plug my two favorite underwatched TV shows. The only reality TV show that I watch, The Boyfriend, it is a Achillean Japanese reality show. The first major queer reality show content in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. Achillean is a term I learned because of this TV show, and it just means queer men because of Achilles. In the same way that Sapphic.
Sapphic, yep, that's what I was thinking of. It's the equivalent to Sapphic, Achillic. I knew there was something, I was trying to think of that the other day, but great.
Yeah. So The Boyfriend is incredible. The premise is that a bunch of queer men live in a home together and they have to resolve conflict. And the main shtick is that they have to run a coffee truck together. And so one person is chosen to choose another person to work with. And what I observed in that show truly made me, I've taken not to go on a tangent, but I've taken a break away from dating and sex for the last year. And that was kind of a catalyst. And because I was wow, I'm not doing this right. It really was really beautiful and wonderful. So that's my main plug. And my second is my favorite queer TV show of all time, which is Young Royals. It is a Swedish TV show. I discovered that one of my really good friends, her name is Rue. We discovered that we both love it. It's the rare show where they give you what you want almost immediately, but are also able to really kind of stretch out, taffy out the tension. And it's not a perfect show. I think the first season is the best. But literally the second scene, you can see the main character falling in love with the other main character. And I watch that scene often, and their chemistry is unparalleled. I have never seen, maybe Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I don't know, the chemistry between these two characters. Call Me by Your Name is it's hard because Armie Hammer is gross, but maybe the chemistry that I felt from Timothy to Oliver or Armie Hammer's character was better than the reverse, but anyway.
Totally. Well, now I have more things to watch, which is lovely. So, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. Do you have anything to plug? Where can people find you?
Thank you so much for allowing this opportunity for me to plug myself. As painful, it's not painful. It's actually a joy to do it. I say that truthfully. I have no social media, but you can add me on LinkedIn if you want to. It's just Ryan Let's They Them. I think there's a picture of me in the snow, but my website is pandointegrationcoaching.com. Pando is Pando. It is named after my niche interest, which is aspen trees. So Pando is an aspen colony. It is the oldest and heaviest continuously living organism in the world. Aspen colonies can clone themselves, and this particular aspen colony in Fish Lake, Utah, has been continuously regenerating for anywhere from 9 to 60,000 years, and it is a huge forest made up of several thousand trees that look like separate trees, but it is one entity. And that is, I actually have a Pando branch on top of my piano next to Judy Garland, Barbra Streisand, and Julie Andrews, blessed be their names. And I use it as a grounding object for when I trip sit, and multiple people have like hugged Sweet Pando.
That is so beautiful. Well, great. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
She Comes By is part of the Industry Plant Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Alex Mannix, and edited and executive produced by Josh Stretton Carlson. If you're interested in more bisexual content, check out the She Comes By weekly newsletter at shecomesbyweekly.substack.com. That's shecomesbyweekly.substack.com.